Mr. Salve, the big picture, the panic continues among shareholders, the shock continues in corporate India, but our information very clearly is that this was not overnight, this was building up, and there was a perception building up that Mr. Mistry was in fact not going to bat for Mr. Tata, that Mr. Tata's own reputation, according to those close to Mr. Tata, was now endangered.
Well, Barkha, you've got your finger on it rightly. Always remember one thing, this is not for property, this is not for money. Tatas are an institution. And legally, when you say head of the Tata Group, there is no such concept, but the optic, the power, the stature of saying head of Tata Group and head of Tata Group companies, chairman of Tata companies, carries a message, carries a portrait, and that's the big picture here. Tatas are an institution, reputationally and financially very important for India, and also I would say for the world today. And when it comes to governance of an institution, sometimes things don't go right. Changes have to be made. There is hurt, there is disappointment, there is sometimes a feeling also of a sense of humiliation, but I'm sure all the people concerned here know that they're not fighting for a piece of land, a piece of property. They will all rise to the occasion because the cause of the Tata name and the Tata integrity and the Tata reputation is far bigger than any of these people involved. And I'm sure they all know that. And that is why they have done this. And you're right, this is not something which they would have done overnight, because this was not somebody who was trying to grab something or trying to sneak past someone. There must have been reasons which impelled a bunch of very senior people, most of whom have no financial stakes in the matter, to take this decision.
Now, Mr. Salve, it is our information from sources close to Mr. Ratan Tata that there was a perception, and this is a direct quote from one source, that all that Mr. Ratan Tata had built up over decades was coming undone by Cyrus Mistry. One source told me that family jewels were in fact being sold, the reference being of course to the UK steel business that Ratan Tata had negotiated himself, the acquisition of Chorus, the selling of the urea business to a Norway company, the selling of hotels in the United States. How do you see this phrase, the selling of family jewels, as a reason for the rupture?
See, there's the old saying, where the going gets tough, the tough get going. And Tata's had a thundering reputation for weathering storms. They are a huge conglomerate. Their reputation is such, losses apart, even today, if they were to go onto the financial market and want to raise monies to tide over difficult times, I'm sure the market would respond warmly to them. There may be a difference in perception on how you run conglomerates. One is that you don't ditch assets in difficult moments unless you find their long-term viability to be compromised. And if the long-term viability is compromised, you try first to fix it before you dismantle it. Now that's an approach. Tatas have assiduously grown the empire, and there was a feeling that profits more than institutional structure are driving. Now, of course, nobody can run without profits, and the performance of the group was dismal. I believe it was virtually down to one company, TCS, to keep the flag flying. But all those are problems which a business house faces every now and then, and you have to learn to deal with them. So yes, there was a feeling that a lot of assets which have been acquired, and mind you, as you know, I spent a bit of time now in London, the reputation which India had when we bought Jaguar Land Rover, when we bought Tata Steel. I mean, we used to say with pride when we saw a Jaguar car drive past, saying that's an Indian car. So, you know, that was a perceptual change which came. And I remember reading a beautiful article in The Guardian about how Tatas had changed the work culture of Jaguar Land Rover and turned the company around. So this is what made India and Indian industry a global name. So you have to be, there is a particular way in which one perceived the fact that you sell off, you're putting Tata Steel on the block, you're putting something else on the block. Acquiring Tata Steel was not just buying a business, it was buying into an institution in the United Kingdom. You don't ditch institutions the way the perception was. So I think these were the kind of structural problems which possibly the Tata board felt called for a change of captainship.
So you are confirming when you say that you don't just ditch assets like that, you are confirming that the selling of the family jewels, metaphorically as one source called it, the many different assets that were sold under the chairmanship of Cyrus Mistry would have definitely been a disappointment for Ratan Tata and the group, because according to you, the Tata Group believes more in institution building and preserving that legacy than immediate profit or cost cutting.
That's right. See, that's the question is, how do you weather storms? Do you sort of cut loose the boats which are wobbling in the storm, or do you assimilate and bring everything together and try and hold the ship together? So it's a question of stewardship, and if they've lost confidence, they've lost confidence. This is a matter of confidence. As I told you, this is not about grabbing property, this is not about grabbing control. All the big companies are listed. There is a huge institutional shareholding in all these companies. There are independent directors. Today, India corporate law is so powerful on issues of governance. So today, it's no longer a question of running companies for private profit. It's more a matter of prestige and honor, which does sort of bump up against a sense of disappointment, or like the media is playing up, somebody's been sacked or somebody's been removed, and therefore. But I'm sure all this will blow away very soon, and the people concerned will rise to the occasion and realize that things like this happen in the lives of institutions.
A very important comment from you. You said Ratan Tata is not trying to snatch a piece of property. It was basically about losing confidence in Cyrus Mistry. And that's really the key headline coming from Harish Salve. Another fault line, Mr. Salve, was seen as the DoCoMo Tata Group case. DoCoMo, of course, being the Japanese company, now an international arbitration court awarded the DoCoMo that Tata should pay them $1.17 billion. The Tata said this was against RBI regulations. The RBI is now a party to the case. Now, one source telling us that it was this particular case in which there was a growing suspicion within the Tata Group that, to quote this source, Mr. Mistry may have actually thrown Ratan Tata under the bus, may have made him a scapegoat. How do you see the DoCoMo case as a breaking point?
Well, I have no personal idea about how a specific case was being dealt with at the two levels. But yes, I'm start by saying I appeared for Tatas in the DoCoMo case. We were disappointed that the tribunal did not deal with the RBI issue in the award, but well, that's life. The trouble is the RBI didn't take too kindly to the fact that the operative order of the tribunal virtually was in the face of the RBI order. The RBI has gotten to the act, and I don't know where it's all going to end up. So, and I think Tata is a bit between the proverbial rock and the hard place. Now, I have been out of that case since the award came. I don't know, somebody else is handling it, so I don't have the details. But it could be a sticking point for the Tatas.
Those close to the Tatas, Mr. Salve, have also suggested a conflict over what they're calling conflict of interest issues with Mr. Mistry. We do not have, we should clarify, despite asking Mr. Mistry's response to this, but a charge being made by Mr. Tata's camp that there was still business being done with the Pallonji Group, and that this was seen to be a conflict of interest, that thousands of crores of business was still being granted to the business of Mr. Mistry, though he had, of course, resigned and cut his own posts and ties from that group.
I doubt. I think the decision would rest on more substantial and higher and bigger issues. I have no idea about any details of this kind, and I'm sure with today's kind of governance, if there are related party contracts, they all have to undergo scrutiny, and they can always be fixed if there is any such problem. I'm sure the real problem was the general feeling possibly of the board that the governance needed a fix of the group as such, and not of any particular company or a set of transactions. And I think that is what has possibly impelled this board to do something which Tatas are not known to be doing.
Governance needed a fix is another very important statement that you're making, Mr. Salve. When you see governance, are you talking about a clash of cultures, a clash of philosophies, or something deeper that was not compatible with the culture of the Tatas?
See, I think the problem is at different levels, Barkha. You can't pin it down to any one level. But it has risen to the level where the perception of how Tatas were and how Tatas grew over the last few decades, of where Tatas had reached as an institution in the last few decades. And there was a perception that that is now going to be unwound. Now that's at a higher level. At the lower level, there have been differences in working style and differences in stuff. If there is a third tier about individual transactions which were questionable, I have no idea about that. But the problems of these kind of institutions normally are at multiple layers, and when it reaches the upper layer, where you feel somebody's continuance or a group of people, like the Tata Sons board, feels that somebody's continuance at the helm of affairs is not in the interest of the institution, actions like this are taken. So I'm sure there are various layers of problems.
Mr. Salve, let's also bring you Mr. Mistry's perspective. He hasn't, of course, spoken on record much, but those who speak for him say that when he took over as chairman, Ratan Tata actually told him, we can bring up those pictures of them together, Ratan Tata actually told him, be your own man. And the argument would be made that, in fact, Ratan Tata and the Tata Group did not allow Cyrus Mistry to be his own man. We hear reports that he was not consulted on key appointments to the board. He gave an interview which has now been pulled down from the Tata website. So in effect, he hasn't actually been given the space to be autonomous. And how do you respond to that charge?
Well, I don't think, see, when Mr. Mistry went in, he knew the architecture of the Tata Group. He knew there were trusts on the top. He knew that the control the trusts have exercised all along. And Tata's has never been a promoter-driven company in that sense. It's always been institutional from JRD's stance. So he knew the architecture of what he was going into. Now, whether individual instances have happened of this kind, speaking for myself, I think Mr. Ratan Tata has been more into other issues, and I think he's been by and large into retirement. If he may have put in a word now and then for taking a decision one way or the other, I mean, that is possible. But I don't think Mr. Mistry was made of such mild stuff that he would have also allowed somebody to push him around, where the responsibility of anything going wrong would have come on his shoulders. So I think he was also, it's not that he was a person who could be pushed and shoved around. So I don't think all these stories really do justice to the enormity of the problem and the solution which has been found.
When you speak of the enormity of the problem, I ask you, Harish Salve, as a friend of Ratan Tata's and somebody who's advised the group, what is the problem in one line? Define the problem in one line between Cyrus Mistry and the Tata Group.
Well, as I see, the problem in one line is Tatas are an institution. Their architecture is such that the board of directors of Tata Sons and the Tata Trusts decide how this institution is to be run. And at some point they found that the way it was being run became incompatible with the Tata value system and the Tata ecosystem.
Those are strong words. The Cyrus Mistry's values were incompatible to the values of the Tata Group and the Tata ecosystem. But let me ask you to talk about what comes next, because a lot of people would be concerned about that. Who would now lead the Tata Group? There are names like Indra Nui, Noel Tata doing the rounds, but there will be criticism that the Cyrus Mistry experiment shows that no outsider to the family can actually be allowed space to function. Mr. Mistry lasted for 4 years compared to Mr. Tata's nearly 22. So, you know, there will be questions on whether an outsider can and will be allowed to lead the Tata Group.
See, what you're raising is a very interesting issue. Can an outsider run the Tata Group? And I say, why not? And that will be the next step of evolution of the Tata Group. I mean, in that sense, Cyrus Mistry was a relative outsider. So I think the group has the maturity and the inner strength to grow out. I mean, look at the board of Tata Sons. How many people from the Tata family are on the board of Tata Sons today? I don't think there's anybody there. So the way this institution is run is, in that sense, very different from other Indian corporates. And as far as all these perceptions are concerned, of course, there is bound to be a little gossip, but it has to be about the future. Please understand one thing, Tata Sons today is the majority shareholders in a slew of listed companies. there is minority shareholder interest, there is institutional interest. It is one of India's most important fiscal institutions. There are today so many stakeholders in Tatas, and whenever a thing like this happens, there is a quake and share prices take a tumble. There is a crisis of confidence sometimes which builds in. I think today Mr. Ratan Tata's biggest job will be to show that there is continuity in the day-to-day working of the Tata Group. Nothing has changed. And they are looking to the future and getting ahead.
But in the end, you know, we do have to remember that the Pallonji Group of Mr. Mistry's family still has 18.5% shareholding. They're going to be an influential voice. We could be looking at the perils of prolonged litigation. Mr. Mistry did initially suggest that he had taken no decision on this yet on challenging the decision, but we are seeing both sides file caveats. How will this kind of prolonged litigation impact the future that you're talking about?
Well, for the sake of Tatas and for the sake of India, I hope there is no litigation. I think it's remarkable that at this moment of trial, Mr. Cyrus Mistry has said what he has said, and the kind of wisdom which he and his advisors have shown, if that continues to guide the destiny of this group, I'm sure they will ride the storm.